Okay, so for more on this, we're now joined by Neama Rahmani. He is president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers and a former federal prosecutor. We reached him in Los Angeles. Good to speak with you.
Of course, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, this is all very fresh, but you're familiar with what's happened here. The trial dismissed. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are this is one of the most botched prosecutions in American history, and I've covered it every single day. And from the beginning, from the district attorney charging an unconstitutional enhancement for appointing special prosecutors that were members of the New Mexico state legislature who had to step down because of the separation of powers issue. And now the cardinal sin for a prosecutor, withholding exculpatory evidence, something every first-year law student knows what you're not supposed to do. It's a Supreme Court violation. It's a constitutional violation. And as a result, Alec Baldwin and likely Hannah Gutierrez-Reed are going to walk free.
So you call this a cardinal sin. We don't know what the evidence is. Steve Futterman, the journalist we just heard from, talked about it possibly having to do with live ammunition, which would seem to be pretty important evidence given what we're talking about here, the fact that live ammunition was used on set. I can understand why it's a cardinal sin. How does something like that happen, since everyone involved is supposed to know not to do that, to withhold it?
Well, withholding evidence is really the worst thing you can do. And in this case, the withholding was willful. It was intentional. If it was inadvertent, maybe, just maybe, the prosecution could have stayed on the case. Maybe the judge would have given an adverse jury instruction and instruct the jurors that the prosecution didn't comply with its obligations. But it really doesn't matter whether those were the rounds that killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. The point is, there was evidence that Seth Kenney, who was the prop supplier, may have supplied the rounds that killed Halyna Hutchins. In this case, and in the previous case, the prosecution argued that it was Hannah Gutierrez-Reed that provided those rounds. And the point is, it's not a matter for the prosecution to decide what evidence is relevant and what's not. They have to disclose everything, especially anything that may be exculpatory. And that failure to do so is a violation and a miscarriage of justice.
So this is dismissed and with prejudice, which we understand means that Alec Baldwin has endured jeopardy. And so that particular charge, he cannot be recharged with that. Could he face a different charge?
Unlikely. Likely what the prosecution may decide to do is appeal this case, but they have so much egg on their face. One of the special prosecutors resigned rather than address the court because she knew that it was such a violation. The other took the stand and tried to defend her actions. But ultimately, I think we're going to see the end of this. This has just been one stinging defeat after another for the New Mexico District Attorney's Office. And I don't think anyone is going to touch this case, given how poorly it's been handled to date.
And you think also that the armorer, the rust set armorer who has already been found guilty and is serving a sentence may now appeal based on this?
I think she's going to be free as well, because this evidence exonerates her, frankly, more than Alec Baldwin, because the state's theory was that Gutierrez-Reed was using drugs and alcohol, wasn't paying attention, and she was the one who brought the live rounds on set, and the jury convicted on that basis. Well, it turns out there's a whole other set of evidence that may show that someone else was responsible for providing those live rounds, the prop supplier, Kenney and his company. So to the extent that that evidence wasn't considered by the previous jury, wasn't disclosed to her lawyer, that's a basis to have that conviction overturned, and I expect the judge to do so.
And that sort of spells what you say could be the end here. I'm struck watching the pictures of Alec Baldwin as he's hearing the judge make this ruling, dismissing the case, and he's sobbing as he's hearing this read. Does he have recourse? Does the rust armorer have recourse? Given the fact that the prosecutor took the stand and to try and defend themselves, is there somewhere else this goes?
It's unlikely. Prosecutors generally have immunity. And let's not forget, this doesn't mean that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed or Alec Baldwin, they're actually innocent. The rounds that killed Halyna Hutchins could have easily come from Gutierrez-Reed. The problem is this is a procedural error. This is a constitutional violation. You can't withhold evidence as a prosecutor. You're not there to win. And this is something I learned my first day as a prosecutor. And this is something we learned from Justice Blackstone, a famous British judge hundreds of years ago. And he said, it's better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent person suffer. As a prosecutor, you're held to a higher standard. You have to disclose everything. Let the chips fall where they may. And the fact that the prosecution in this case willfully, not just inadvertently, willfully withheld potential exculpatory evidence, that's why this case is being dismissed. And that's why I think this is the end of any criminal prosecution of Alec Baldwin or Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
Neama Rahmani, president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers, former federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. Really appreciate talking to you tonight. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.